the practical test that we do for the approved contractors for water, and then some of the issues that we find in installation inspection. So I'm the one who is conducting the exam. For the exam, we have supervisors and plumbers. For the plumbers, we give practical exam only. This includes an oral exam, some few questions and answers on the booths that we have at KM6. For the supervisors, we give them a theoretical exam and a practical exam and an oral exam. So the supervisor should know everything that the plumbers know. Some of the main issues I'm facing in the exams is knowledge of the installation codes. I don't expect the plumbers to know all the installation codes and regulation, but when the supervisor is coming there, I would ask him, and he could expect to be asked anything from the regulation. In the multiple choice exam, in the written exam, which is the theoretical exam, it's mostly from the regulation. So if he knows the regulation, he will pass. Regarding the practical exam, I'm finding that many people are working on PPR only, which is what most people ask for in their houses. But copper pipe must be installed in the beginning for each villa, for each premise. Our water that comes from the water network must only enter the meter all the way up to the riser as in copper. And then if you transfer to PPR, that's okay, but you need special building permit approval in the beginning to get PPR inside the villa or whatever the premises is. So what I'm noticing is that people don't know how to use copper. They can cut the copper pipe, but they cannot install it. Even if they do, the fittings are usually not good enough. They are very weak. They don't focus on stability. They don't focus on leakages. Leakage is a huge issue. It's one of the things that you need to prevent from happening by having more skilled laborers working with copper, because copper will experience very high pressures. So from the main cabinet outside all the way to the main tank, it should be copper. From the main tank all the way to the roof tank, it also should be copper. I would advise you also to install copper all the way to the filter. After the filter, you're fine if you install PPR. No, I'm still. We focus on, in the exam, unfortunately, I'm not able to give out lots of information. It's not training, it's only an exam. And I place a lot of marks on earthing. We don't have many earthing examples at the station where we examine them, but there are a couple. And I take each and every individual to the locations where we have earthing, and I ask them about it. Unfortunately, for the past few months, I can only count a handful of people who only answer the questions or notice that the earthing is disconnected. So earthing, especially when it comes to water pumps, nobody even makes a mention of it. Earthing when it comes to heaters, it's like hanging in front of you. Why won't you touch it? They think it should be on the electrical person. But sometimes when the owner asks you to fix his house, he will only get a plumber. The plumber should know about earthing. The other step is clamp usage. I spoke briefly about it. We have been facing some issues inside the house where the pipes tend to, especially when they are horizontal and they have some heavy equipment on them, heavy fittings, or let's say even an internal submeter, 54 mm submeter on these internal pipes. They will slag, they will bend a little bit. That bending can be prevented by using some good clamps or any kind of L-shaped stools to stop them from hanging. In the exam, for the first couple of batches, people were not even aware of it, but it seems that word got around and they started using some. But still not to the degree that I would prefer. So please, when you send your people, try to ask them or get them to know where to install the clamps, and focus on the stability of the pipe. Next, leveling. Most of the internal pipes will be inside the wall, but we do the exam and we use connections that are outside on the wall just to see how they would work. We don't expect them to break anything and then plaster it. That's not their scope of work. When I look at the work that they do, it's visually unappealing, and any owner that has his house being built would look at it, would reject it. So try to keep the pipes level, or if you have two pipes next to each other, at least they have to be parallel. Supervisor lacking practical skills. From every few batches, or one batch and the other is okay, supervisors would be excellent in the theoretical knowledge, but when it comes to practical, it's not that good. I can understand why. They don't work with their hands at site, but they're expected to fix problems that the plumbers cannot during installation. So now we'll go to the second part. First, we spoke about the examination, why people are failing. Now we will start talking about the installation inspection that is done mainly by engineer Jamal Al-Amadi. Most of you know him, of course. I will talk about the sticker placement and mismatch. Second point would be the main meter and electrical numbers. Third point, non-adherence to a service site plan, approved service site plan. And finally, direct connections. Sticker placement and mismatch. It occurs when stickers are placed without physical testing. So you're approved contractors and you're submitting, for example, two houses that were built by the same owner. Two houses on the same floor, on the same PIN number, or two PIN numbers next to each other, built by the same owner. This is a very simple example. What will happen is that we give you one electricity and one water number for each villa. What happens is that, unfortunately, the contractor will mix up these numbers. He will keep the electrical numbers correct, but the water numbers will be swapped against the system. So we want the contractor to adhere to the linkages between water and electricity. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but every water number should have an electrical number. 99% of the cases. Only in few cases, like fire, main meters especially, we will get to that. In the case of apartments, let's say there's a meter room downstairs for all the meters. What I'm seeing is people are placing the number stickers, the ones where we will come and replace with number plates. They are placing them randomly and then not placing the same number on the apartment that it feeds. So there's a pipe going from on the ground floor where the meter is all the way up to the apartment. These two locations should have the apartment door and the meter downstairs. They should have the same water number. Same goes for electricity. The location where you will install the electric meter for that apartment must have the same electricity number on the location where the meter will be installed and on the door. So for apartment 15, let's say on the 15th floor, 01, you should physically test the site and not rely on any plans or drawings. Never rely on drawings. Only rely on physical testing to see what water pipe goes to that apartment and what electrical connection goes to that apartment. Only then place this electricity number and water numbers. For water, there are a number of ways that you can test. You can do a flow test. You can get a tanker to fill up the water if you don't have a service connection already with the meter outside. And then you can do a flow test. You can put a stop valve on the location of the meter, stop the water, and see. Did that 1501 apartment stop having water? Same for electricity, but I don't know how to do it. How for electricity? I think you can send a signal check. I don't know. You can do an air pressure test. Location where the meter will be installed, you can pressurize it with a very simple leaf blower or a small blower, air blower, and check, does the apartment receive the air that you are blowing into or not? Mismatch would become apparent later on in the future and would have lots of repercussions for the customer. First, there's a loss of money. The customer cannot move in, cannot move out. Some people have to leave the country, but they cannot create a final bill and get out of Kahramaa contract. Sometimes people are prevented from leasing the apartment to somebody else, all because of mismatch. And mismatch is very prevalent, gentlemen. Very prevalent. What from our side, we require that the contractor come back again. If, for example, if it's X, this company X, we will contact the contractor. We will ask him to go to the site, check every electricity and water number manually, and provide us the report. And then we will upload this report to our system and take action for it. We also take stern action against people who cause mismatch. It should never happen, gentlemen. It's a very complex issue to solve and much easier to prevent in the beginning. There are more than one type of mismatch. Some kind of mismatches have, let's say you have an electricity number, 123. When you enter this electricity number into the system, in our billing system, it should give you the details of the meter, date of installation, serial number, reading. If there's a mismatch, you will see that this number, electricity 123XXX, this has different reading, has a different serial number than the one at site. So one type of mismatch is serial number at site and system are not matching. Another type of mismatch is that water and electricity linkages in the system are not the same at site. So this apartment 1501 has water number 123XX at the door I'm talking, and electricity number 123XXX, water number 1313005. Ongoing issue. Okay. main meter and the electricity numbers. In Kahramaa, we have a few designations for water meters. For a villa, they will only have one water meter. We don't call this main water meter, it's called a normal water meter. A normal water meter is connected directly to the network and there are no meters after it. Water consumption will be directly after the normal meter. And then we have a main meter. A main meter, for example, there's a big apartment building and you want to lease out the apartments to different people. We have to install a main meter for you to view your consumption for monitoring purposes. But the lease and the tenant name will go out to the submeters. The submeters are installed in different locations, but in our new regulation, we would require all the submeters to be installed on the floors. So the main meter would be connected to the main network and would have some other submeters after it, which would register the consumption. For any main meter and submeter connection, we cannot allow any water consumption after the main meter. This is illegal. Any line coming out of the main meter and not going to a submeter is considered illegal. And we have another type called sub-main meter. For example, you have a very big compound, would have a main meter on the boundary wall. Every type of premise should have a meter at the boundary wall. And if we cannot put the submeters on the boundary wall, we will give you a main meter. And after this main meter, in our example, it will go to apartment buildings. These apartment buildings would again have another main meter called sub-main meter. These sub-main meters would have sub-meters after that. The problem is during inspection, some inspections are rejected because of the number placement. Again, we're talking about linkages. So when you submit the main meter and the sub-meters, some people, it seems logical that you would put the main electricity number linked to the main water number. But in Kahramaa, we keep the main meter linked to a dummy service number. Or when you submit the report, it has to be linked to 0. So you will put the water number in this Excel cell, and then next to it, you will put the number 0 and submit it to Kahramaa. Please do not put the landlord meter or the LV meter next to the main meter. If, for example, by mistake, this caused the main meter to be linked to the landlord electricity number, this will cause the bill to come to the customer on the main meter. And we all know main meters are not built. They are there only for consumption monitoring purposes. You don't want a duplicate bill for your customer. So please, when you submit the list, always keep the main meter electricity number 0. In the future, we will link it to a service number. A service number has another name called dummy number. It also has a name called parent. Main meter location is always on the boundary. Sub-main meter can be inside if it's a compound, but you must have to have a main meter at the boundary where the service connection, Kahramaa service connection ends. And for 42 mm meters and above, we require we have the same service connection now for 22, 28, and 42. But the difference at site is that the 28 and 22 would have soft copper. Soft copper, you can only take it to the service connection and you would be okay. we will connect from below. But if you are using hard copper, in the case of 42 mm and above, at the service cabinet, we need you to direct the pipe all the way below to the ground. So we can come and connect it from the service connection. Okay. When you have a main meter and sub-meters, and you needed sub-main meters, which are the smaller main meters for the compound buildings, large compound, 1 main meter outside. For every building there, a big building, you will need a sub-main meter. It's not a must, but it's good for the owner or for you to see if there's a leakage in the future. You can calculate the consumption of sub-meters, subtract them from the main meter, from the sub-main meter, and see if there's a difference. If there's a difference, there's a leakage or a direct connection somewhere. But we need you to identify them. Please, gentlemen, when you send us the list of main and sub-meters, or main, sub-main meters, and sub-meters, kindly always identify them for us. So we can know that this building has, for example, 20 sub-meters under this sub-main meter, while this building has this set of water meters, water sub-meters under this sub-main meter. Or, more simply, just these sub-meters under this main meter if there's no sub-meter. And if you are applying through KMSP, we need the contractor to follow up with Kahramaa, Counter 21, Hotline CSI, so we can encode the main meter and the sub-meters to avoid duplicate bills. We are getting so many complaints from your customers that this is a main meter, that I'm being billed for it. We don't encode it from the beginning. The system does not do that. We leave it to a manual process at the end because it needs lots of confirmation. We're talking about money, we're talking about consumption. This is something that has to be done by a human to identify the main and sub-meters. So after you apply for main and sub-meters and they are installed, please follow up with Counter 21 CSP Hilal, Hotline CSI at km.qa. Let us know that this was done and the installation is completed and you want to encode the main meter as main. This is the terminology we use. To encode is to put the code MM on the meter. This will prevent the bills from coming on the meter in the future. It will prevent duplicate bills, one time on the main and then on the sub-meter. Something that we noticed during the inspection is that the surface site plan was approved to have the meters in a specific location. But upon inspection, we find that the contractor is providing us a new updated surface site plan, maybe with better placement for the meters. The problem is that we did not approve it, and for any number of reasons, I don't have them on the top of my head, but it will be rejected. We need you to adhere to what you did, what we agreed together on the service site plan. The location of the meter, the location of the tanks. Some people would remove the tank after it is installed. But during inspection, we need the tank to be at least 5 meters or what was agreed to from the main cabinet. And we need the pumps, especially the pumps. Some people would, if they are building a compound or of separate PIN numbers of villas next to each other, they would take the pumps from one location to the other, depending on the inspection. Please don't do that. The minimum number of pumps is 2 for villas at the ground tank, and yes, a different size location of tank, difference in pipe material. So as I mentioned earlier, some people would put down HDPE as the material they would use. They would put copper, and maybe even ductile iron. But upon inspection, we find them using PPR. PPR always needs to have special approval from building permit phase. CPVC, UPVC, please avoid that as much as possible. We will have to reject. Our water cannot touch CPVC or UPVC. And you need special approval to get it, but it's very difficult. We see that you use copper pipe is best, but it's too expensive. PPR can be used, but only after the riser or after the filter or after the roof tank. The water that comes from the network all the way to the roof tank must be copper or whatever was agreed upon. Direct connections. The biggest issue we are facing in water are direct connections and meter mismatches. Direct connections will cause the definition of direct connection. Any water that is being used that does not pass a water meter. Any unregistered consumption of water meter. It's of course illegal. It has lots of repercussions for the customer, for the person, for the contractor who submitted. We wish to avoid this as much as possible. No matter what we do afterwards, there are losses, and we cannot recuperate the losses. No matter how much we fine the owner or the contractor. Please, gentlemen, any water that is being consumed must pass through a meter. We have noticed that lots of people will not apply for a water meter number during a comprehensive phase, KMSB or building permit, for the guard room. They will take directly from the roof tank or from a connection, direct connection from the header before the meters. Fire systems. Lots of locations think that fire should be free. I don't know, but fire is never free. Sabil water, the cold water for charity that people put in front of their houses, this is also not free. You want to do charity, please do it on your own, on your own pocket, not Kahramaa pocket. Okay, and direct connections come in forms, many forms and shapes. They are not always easy to identify, but if identified, they have to be either disconnected, or if there is proper usage for it, and you can justify the reason for having this kind of connection, why to justify the use of water, just rectify the site and apply a KMSB direct connection. Nobody will, or additional meter depending on the location. Nobody will do anything but install a meter and we'll be both happy. Direct connections after the main meter are kind of obvious because of the consumption. We calculate the consumption difference between main and sub-meters. We can find the difference. But some direct connections are hard to detect. Some people will connect below the meter. I know usually none of you will do that or help the customer connect from below the meter. But some mistakes happen. Some people don't know. Some people think that because there is a main meter, this is not direct connection. If it passes the main meter and not a sub-meter, it is a direct connection. Some customers will say, no, but that's okay. There's a big meter outside. I'm taking from that meter. We don't bill you for the main meter, so it has to be rectified, cut off, install a meter instead. Building services, irrigation, swimming pools, clubhouses, especially the small faucets. Do you know the faucets that people use for irrigation, the ones that come out of the ground? These usually don't have a meter somewhere in the back. We cannot install a meter for them. And if you have irrigation use, please let us consider the case and see if we can give you a meter for irrigation, or there's a possibility to use TSE instead from Ishghal. Swimming pools. During the building permit phase, they will reject any swimming pools that are connected to the network. Some may apply for exception, but it will always usually be rejected unless there's a very